Hello and welcome. I'm Patrick Curtis, your host and chief monkey, and this is the Wall Street Oasis podcast. Join me as I talk to some of the community's most successful and inspirational members to gain valuable insight into different career paths and life in general. Let's get to it. In this episode, MedTech Monkey shares how he broke into an exciting high-growth M&A corporate development position at a Fortune 500 company, coming from an accounting background at a non-target university, how much he's getting paid now, and a key piece of advice to our listeners. Enjoy. MedTech Monkey, thank you so much for joining the Wall Street Oasis podcast.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
So it'd be great if you could just give the listeners a quick little summary of your background.
Sure. So I went to a non-target school. Didn't know I wanted to do investment banking or M&A. Didn't really know what it was. So I ended up getting my bachelor's and master's in accounting. And I started my career at a regional public accounting firm doing audit. Did the whole CPA track and learned real quick it wasn't for me. And actually, when I came back home to my internships, I had a classmate that had interned at Goldman in their investment banking division. And after talking to him and comparing what we did on our internships, his sounded a lot more interesting than mine. So that's kind of what opened my eyes to M&A. So I started off my career in audit, did that for like a year and a half, and then I transitioned to the company's advisory department. So I was doing financial modeling, valuation, and financial due diligence, so quality of earnings for private equity-backed deals. Mm-hmm. That really got me exposure in the M&A world.
Got it. So
and after that, through my network, I had landed an interview at a few investment banks that didn't pan out. Middle market ones like William Blair. I got one Goldman. That was just a lot of networking, a lot of cold calling, a lot of cold emailing. Neither of those panned out, and then an opportunity came across my desk to work in corporate development at a very acquisitive company, a Fortune 500 company. So I jumped on that and interviewed and landed where I'm at now.
Awesome. Thanks for the quick summary. So I guess going back to your undergrad, so when you kind of were there and you didn't even know about investment banking, you were saying after your internship, so this was after like your junior year internship, your friend had been at Goldman doing an internship and that's kind of opened your eyes to it, or was it later?
Yeah, it was actually my senior year. I did an accounting degree. So The school I went to requires you to do, the 5-year program. So a lot of myself and my classmates in the program, you do your internship after your senior year. So when we come back for our master's, I had office hours as I was a TA, and him and I would just sit there and chat. We'd chat about our internships, and like I said, when I started talking about my assurance and my audit internship, and he started talking about his investment banking one, it was like, wow, that sounds much more exciting up my alley.
So this was obviously super late for you. So you're a senior, you're thinking, oh, well, I haven't,
Yeah, I already accepted a job offer. Yeah, I already accepted the job offer from the firm that I got. I probably jumped the gun. So if I had any advice to give some other guys in school right now, guys or girls in school, would be don't be afraid to explore and check out other options. And that would be definitely my one piece of advice for juniors out there.
Why do you think you weren't exposed to these types of careers before? Why did it take like that conversation? You just hadn't found Wall Street Oasis, or you just hadn't found like the place? When did you like come across us? And did it just take that conversation for the light bulb to go off, or what was kind of the impetus?
Yeah, it did. I mean, investment banking, doesn't, at the time, I came from a smaller town. There wasn't like a whole lot of people who had gone to the Wall Street route. Not a whole lot of people from my high school went to, the target schools. So It was just, I didn't really know what I wanted to do at 18 years old. So I picked, a state school that was affordable for me, that had a great accounting school. So I was like, I'm going to at least pick the best business major that I can. And if I need to go to a top target school, I can always go back to business school. So I just really wasn't exposed to it, when I was 18, 19 years old. And you don't hear about it too much at some schools. You might hear what it is, but they don't go into the careers or recruiting process or really anything like that.
You don't know about the pay, and you don't know about the exit opportunities. They don't go into all of that good stuff. So
definitely. All you really hear is just if you go investment banking, you'll work 80 to 100 hours a week. And, you know, that's all they kind of tell you. And the school I went to, they really pushed public accounting, you know, down your throat.
Yeah. And so, you know, well, they have a strong accounting program, so probably a little biased. But anyway, so you kind of were following that path. And then what was the feeling when you kind of knew, hey, you wanted to switch gears and you knew you couldn't right away? What was that like? And then how did you prepare yourself? So you were almost like one foot out the door already when you started your first job out of school, it sounds like.
100%. So when I had started, I had known that we had a financial due diligence group that did peer review work. I knew that we had a valuation group. So that group, it was notoriously difficult to get into. So at the day one at the firm, I had I found out who the partners in charge of those groups were. I had networked with them internally and just met with them for like 15 minutes. And just said, hey, my name's, XYZ. And, this is what, I really want to work in this group. And their responses was, hey, we don't have any openings right now. Be a top performer. Do really well, do solid work. And then we'll start transitioning you over. Take level 1 of the CFA, pass that and show us that you're committed, and we'll talk, when that happens. So I did my time. I put
the CFA or the CPA? CFA or CPA?
CFA. So yeah. So I've done the CPA route. I finished it while I was in school. I finished it about a month before I started working full time, which was really helpful. So when I was doing the CPA, I recommend, if you're going to take that route, finish it before you start working full time. But yeah, so I had already considered doing a CFA and again that finance knowledge. So I was like, all right, I'll pass level 1, and I want to start working on stuff as soon as I pass level 1. So I followed through on what I did, and so after I passed level 1, I did my first busy season, had solid reviews, and they started transitioning me, started doing some of the review work, and I had to do one more busy season, and then as soon as that was done, they transitioned me full time doing valuation, financial modeling, and
that's a
quality of earnings analysis.
Yeah, and that's a really tough transition to make internally because you have to almost have buy-in from the other partners. And was your direct partner in the audit group or in the were they upset? Did you feel like you were running any sort of risk in terms of either getting fired, or is it a more supportive place in terms of making that internal transition?
I would definitely say they were supportive. It's because I had told them that audit was not my career, and they wanted to keep me as long as possible. I think they knew that I wasn't, I wasn't on the partner track. But if you're a top performer and you do good work, they're going to want to keep you, and they knew that, so they accommodated. And on the flip side, I was also flexible too. I had a transition period. There's times that I still had to do audit. They knew I didn't like it, but they were so cool about it. So I think, having the support from the bosses definitely helped that transition phase and helped me gain the experience to get into a corp dev role.
And how did you even know to get into the valuation group or quality earnings and doing all that type of work? It was just obvious to you, or you had heard like, okay, if I am going into an accounting firm, I need to be in these specific groups to help sell myself? Is that something you just learned over time, or your buddy at Goldman had told you?
I was going to say, buddy at Goldman, and he was also, I can also credit him for introducing me to Wall Street Oasis. He had heard about it through his Goldman internship, and that's when I started using Wall Street Oasis as a tool. And I would read, what are other people doing from accounting firms? How are they breaking in? And a lot of them were saying, hey, don't just be quality. Get that financial modeling experience. That's going to be invaluable, and it proved to be invaluable.
Okay, so you're at this accounting firm for what sounds like a year and a half or so, and then tell me about like
say probably 2.5 years.
2.5. Okay, so tell me how like when you started looking for that first transition. So you were getting the right experience, you're getting some financial modeling, some valuation experience, so you had some good stuff on your resume. Now, tell me how you started that whole process. Like, what did it involve? Was it like, okay, you started ramping up your networking, doing more informational sessions, or was it something that you had been like you were ready to make that jump? And tell me a little bit about, were you already interviewing for banks, like lateral positions, or were you just striking out there? I'd love some details on that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So once I got a couple months under my belt of doing the valuation and financial due diligence, where I could talk about the projects I was working on and how that could transition well into banking, I had started just, Googling, just using LinkedIn and Google. And, fortunately I had someone in my network, a family member who, worked there in Kirkland and Ellis. which was a law firm, a big law firm. So he was doing M&A law there, and it was all, I bounced ideas off him. He got me connected with a few people, and I just was very, very just, diligent, man, and just grinding, trying to network. And I ended up, like I said, landing a couple interviews at banks. But ultimately those didn't pan out.
Why do you think that they didn't pan out? What do you think was like the main reason? If you had to look back.
Man, I mean, that's hard to say. I didn't go to a name brand accounting firm. I didn't go to a name brand school, so I think it was easy to pass. And I always made it past the first round, and they always said I'd always ask for feedback because I'm big on that. And I'd say, hey, like, why didn't you hire me? So I know the next bank I interview at, I don't make that same mistake. And the feedback I had was, you're a great candidate. You work hard, but there were just better, more qualified people.
Right.
And
so you feel like it was more of a function of just you didn't have the right background for them to take a risk on you when there was.
I didn't have the pedigree.
Right. Okay. Well, yeah, it's almost like you're already starting at a disadvantage, which is fair, to a lot of the other candidates that were making it past the first round.
And I will say this, man, like, if I kept trying, yeah, I could have made it into banking. Just like I've seen countless others do it from non-target schools and non-traditional backgrounds. So, I was still in the process of trying to break into banking, and that's when the corporate development opportunity came by, and I thought that was better. That was more my speed anyway.
So tell me about that. How did you come across that, and specifically, what attracted you to that position?
Yeah, so I was just, it was during networking. I was talking to a banker who went to a state school similar to myself. Banking wasn't his first career choice, so he had, he'd given me a lot of advice, and he actually, told me to reach out to, if banking isn't happening, start reaching out to others. So I reached out to my internal network, my personal network. I knew someone who worked in M&A at a Fortune 500 company. So I wanted to do banking first, but I said, that's fine. I reached out to him, and he's like, yeah, they're actually looking for somebody with your skill set. And, let me get you connected with the VP of the department. And I had one phone call with the guy. I interviewed well with him. And next thing you know, I got the job, after I went through a series of interviews, and I can touch on that if you want.
Yeah, I'd love to hear about that. Like, so it was pretty quick. It sounds like it was pretty quick. You did a phone screen and they brought you in, a couple interviews. Was it technical at all? I mean, yeah, I mean,
it was actually, I probably watered that down. The process probably took 2 or 3 months to interview.
Okay.
So I had an initial phone screen interview, and then they had me take a personality test, to make sure that I was a profile that fit that company and what they were looking for. And then make every single person do it. I mean, whether you're, an hourly employee, if you're an executive assistant, or if you're even doing an internal person applying for a position, they make you take this personality test.
Okay.
Which, it was just an hour straight of just questions. Like, this is conversational. If this was the test, it would have been like, hey, what is, tell me about a time that you were, you had conflict with someone, and you give them an answer and say, okay, next question. So it's very rapid fire.
So there are multiple choice. Is it multiple choice, or like they're open ended?
Oh, and it's open ended. You're actually having a phone interview with somebody.
Oh, okay. Oh, so it's like a personality, like behavioral fit interview.
Right. Yep. You got it.
I wonder how they're grading that. It's interesting. Like how they're what they're actually trying to fit for in terms of dominance versus just compliance.
Like they're looking, they're just looking for a specific type of person.
Interesting. Okay, so you kind of go through that. Obviously, you didn't fail it, and then specific.
Yeah.
then kind of.
I would call it a super day. I would say I had interviews over, probably wasn't as intense as a super day, but.
Sorry, you broke up a little. You had what? You had a what super day?
I'm sorry, I call it like my corp dev super day.
Corp
I had
dev, okay.
6 interviews, all 45 minutes long. And it was it was a wide variety. I met with senior directors and VPs and of the M&A group, and it was just, some of it was fit, tell me about yourself, tell me about your experience. And then, some of the people who got very technical, they would ask questions that you hear about, like, hey, how many gasoline sales are in the United States? That was one of the questions I got.
Oh, like a sizing consulting question, and they just want to see your thought process. Yeah. What about specifically like accounting question? Given that your accounting background, did any of them get really technical on that?
No, they didn't. They actually were like, one of the two of the guys I interviewed with, I thought they were going to drill me. They were two of the, the valuation finance guys, and I thought they were going to drill me, but they were just like, no, like you have your CPA, you have your master's of accounting. We're not going to ask you how the three three financial statements all work together. You should know that by now. If you don't, then you probably wouldn't be in this position to begin with.
Right.
But they did ask me, like, walk me through a DCF, tell me how you, come up with assumptions, just talk us through more of your thought process. They cared more about my thought process and how I modeled and, how I thought things through versus walk me through, tell me about, what's the golden growth model.
Yeah, not resetting a formula basically, but just seeing that you understood the conceptual frameworks behind the concepts and the methodologies. Like, do you understand the reasons you're using them? Not do you understand how to use them?
Yeah, exactly. Because anybody can go online and learn how to walk through a DCF, but
right.
They wanted to learn more like, okay, how do I build assumptions? They wanted to see your thought process. And to me, I think that shows, does the person know what they're talking about or not?
And so do you feel like you, did you prepare a lot for this? Did you need to prepare a lot for this? Was it something that you felt like your job had prepared you for? Or was it something like you needed more interview skills? And was it hard for you, I guess? Or was it like, did it feel pretty easy?
I don't know. It felt pretty easy. I like to think I'm good at explaining things. I'm good at, being able to walk through, talk my way through problems. And, so I did prepare. I would say I prepared a little bit so that I reviewed previous models that I had worked on. I knew what the space this company was in. So I made sure to kind of research, like, what were multiples? Did I ever do any projects where I had to, I worked in that space, and I tried to make anything. If I didn't, I tried to find something that was very similar to it, something that was relatable, and that way they could see, okay, it's not like this kid was spending time valuing, startup fintech company.
Totally like irrelevant. Yeah. It was something relevant. Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's smart. That's a pattern I hear of like people who are interviewed successfully is they're always looking at ways they can tie in their previous experience to be useful to the current company. So they're saying like, well, this experience is actually really relatable because of X, Y, and Z. I think it's a very common trait of good interviewers is they're always trying to show the company how they fit in and how their experience is really relevant.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Like, they're going to be preparing, one of the questions are like, how do you feel about preparing slide decks that are going to go to, CFOs or the CFO or head of business units and how do you feel about that? And I was like, no problem. And I told him in my last position, I may not have made these specific slides, but quality of earnings stuff that was going to private equity clients who are very sophisticated or, good at what they do. And they're going to notice any small mistakes. So, that's like an example of how I was able to tie it. And I tell everyone to do that with any position. Always try to tie it back.
Right. No, it's great. So do you mind sharing a little bit with the listeners, like just ranges of pay from how you progressed from when you started right out of school to where you're at now? Are you able to give us like, even if it's just a rough range?
Yeah, definitely. I would say, and I would keep in mind, I'm in the Midwest. The salaries are going to be a little bit lower than what they're going to be. I was never in a major city. I was not in Chicago. Yeah,
you're lower cost of living. Area.
Exactly. So I would say I started off in the low 50s for my career in accounting, which is pretty much market, for where it was at. Raises weren't that great. And then I, for corp dev, starting off in, mid 70s, low 80s.
That's great. Yeah, that's great. And so the progression of that, is you're coming in, is it expected that you're going to go back to business school? Like what's next for you? Is it something where you feel like you have a career there that you can grow with the M&A team in corp dev? Or do you feel like there's pressure to kind of leave after a little while?
Okay. Yeah. Business school is definitely on the horizon. I'd want to go full time and I'd want to go to a top 10 school. And, I think right now I want to wait until I get some deals closed under my belt and gain some real valuable experience. That'll help me break into B school.
Yeah. Maybe get a promotion under your belt there. And
right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. It's tough because it's one of those things where, a lot of business schools, they'll look for that like cookie cutter thing. And if you don't have it, there's still like some pedigree bias, right? Yeah, I believe there is. So you have to like basically do really well on the GMAT, and then on top of that, like do really well professionally to have a shot at those top schools.
Exactly. Yeah, and I'm gonna have to kill the GMAT, and I'm gonna have to work hard on that, and no matter what I'd have to, and I'm gonna have to have great experience that can keep me on par with some of the other candidates, because I might be having to go against guys who went to the Yales, the Princetons, the Harvards.
But you can do it. You can do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I do pretty well in it. I mean, I'm excited about going back to B school. I think I'll learn a lot and be able to expand my network.
Cool, man. Well, is there anything else you'd like to, before we call the pod, anything else you want to leave the listeners with, or any piece of advice you'd give to your younger self, even though you're still super young?
Yeah, I would tell every one of you guys, don't, if you really want to make it into banking, you really want to make it into M&A, private equity, venture capital, whatever, hedge fund, don't give up. Don't let someone, just because you didn't go down the traditional path doesn't mean you can't do it. It might make it a little harder, but that just makes you want it that much more. So
Awesome. Well, MedTech Monkey, thanks so much for sharing your wisdom. And thanks to you, my listeners at Wall Street Oasis. If you have any suggestions whatsoever, please don't hesitate to send them my way, Patrick at wallstreetoasis.com. Until next time.